In this video, we're going to look at the process of building a simple calculator in tkinter for Python. And this is going to be really similar to the example that's given in the Murak textbook and in the PowerPoint slides in the core shell. But in the next step, we're actually going to build the same interface using a WYSIWYG designer tool called PyGubu. Now, I've gone ahead and built a Git repository with the finished code for this project in it. So I'm going to go ahead and launch git bash. And we'll cd to somewhere convenient. So let's cd to C users mark downloads. And then let's make dir 133y under repos. And you probably have somewhere convenient already, but I'm going to go ahead and cd into there. And then I'm going to git clone https github.com pcc cis 133y, and then the repository name is it's Ohm's law calculator.git. Okay, and that worked. So let's cd into Ohm's law calculator and do an ls to list the files. So there's just one Python file in here, and there's a README that shows up in the repository when you're looking at it in GitHub. So I'm going to go ahead and open PyCharm community. Any version of PyCharm will work with this. And I'm going to open and then navigate to my downloads folder, 133y repos, and then I'm just going to open this Ohm's law calculator folder. Okay, and then let's make this a little smaller. So here's my Python source file, and I'm going to right click and run it. Okay, so volts is say 110 volts, and then ohms, let's say 50 ohm circuit, and we hit OK. And then a new window pops up that says the answer, 110 volts running through 50 ohms, would be 2.2 amps and 242 watts. So it's a pretty simple calculator. It shows you how to launch a second window, which is not something that's covered in the book. So I'll show you in this video how to do that. But the interface itself is pretty simple. So when we're laying out the interface, there are just a couple of principles to keep in mind that will make your life a little easier. And the first thing is to draw the thing out on a piece of paper or even a graphics program first, and then try to put the interface together. That way you'll be able to figure out exactly what goes where. And one of the things I do to make my life easier, and this is optional, but I find it's really helpful, is to use extra frames inside the interface. So for example, what I have in this interface is this box right here. That's just a label at the top with some padding around it. And then here I have a frame that uses a grid to have these two labels and these two entry boxes. And then here is another frame that just has these two buttons in it. And then I can make this centered, and I can make this sticky on this side, and this sticky centered. And I don't have to worry about how anything lines up. When you're working with a grid in a frame, it's really powerful, but you have to do something special if you don't want this to exactly line up with this, or and so on. You have to span stuff, and it starts to get messy. Whereas if you just make three simple things, there's a label and two frames, and then inside this frame is whatever content I put here, and inside of this frame is whatever content I put here, then I don't have to worry about everything trying to line up when it really doesn't need to. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually build this calculator. And the first thing I'm going to do after I have my design put together and I know how I'm actually going to create it, I'm going to go ahead and mock up the interface. And so I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. And let's go ahead and put this in PyCharm projects. Let's call it simple calculator demo. And I'm going to open that in a new window. And right click, create a new Python file, and I'll call it calculator. Okay, so calculator.py. And then I need to do some imports first. So the first thing I'll import is tkinter. And I'll import tkinter as tk. And tkinter comes bundled with most distributions of Python, so you don't have to do anything special to get this. You can just reference it in your code like so. And then I'm going to put this in a simple app class. So I'll go ahead and create a class, say simple calculator app. And then I'm going to have an init method. And this is going to take a parent frame. And then I can start putting in the usual kinds of commands that you saw in the chapter of the book. So the first thing I want to do is create a top level frame here. So let's say top level is, and let's go ahead and import tkinter.ttk as ttk. So top level is going to be ttk.frame, and then I'm going to give it the parent. This is where this frame is going to be created in, and let's put some padding around it so that it's spaced out. Let's actually go ahead and run the other one again so we can look at it while I'm working on this. So I have 10 pixels of padding all around it. So I want to try to keep logical items grouped together. So this label stands by itself, and then the stuff in here, that's sort of one logical group. It's my inputs. And then these buttons here at the bottom, that's another logical thing. So those are going to be the buttons. So I'm going to have padding around each of those things to sort of visually separate it from the other stuff. So let's do padding is 10. And then underneath this top level frame, I'm going to have a label. And I don't actually need to change this label or edit or anything. So I'm just going to say ttk.label. And this is going to take top level as a frame. And the text is going to be my simple calculator. And what kind of calculator do we want to make? I guess we'll just do another Ohm's law calculator. So let's do Ohm's law calculator. And then we're going to want to set the font on this. So let's do font is Arial 16-point bold. I think that's everything we need for the label for now. And then we're also going to have another frame here. This one I will want to add some stuff to, so I'm going to go ahead and this is going to be my input frame. So this is going to be under the top level. And we're going to put some padding around this thing too. And I'm going to come back to this one. And then we're going to have a button frame. And let's go ahead and put some padding on this one as well. Okay, now the way that I make all of these things stack up is I put them in a grid and set what row I want them to be in. So Actually, I do need this. So header label is that. And then we're going to do header label dot grid. Column is 0, row is 0. And then I can also specify if I want this thing to be sticky exactly where I want it to stick to. So let's go ahead and say sticky is equal to northeast, north, south, east, west. And then this one is going to be input frame dot grid. So everything's going to be in column 0 because I just have one stack. This is row 1. And this is also going to be north, south, east, west. So it's going to take all the available space. And then this one, this is going to be column 0 and row 2. And then for this one, let's go ahead and just make it be sticky on the east. So that's going to be sticky on this side here. Okay, so now I haven't put any items in there, but let's go ahead and I have enough that I actually want to run it and see how it looks so far. But before I do that, I want to have a run method. So we're going to def run. And this is going to call this dot main window dot main loop. And I also need a bit of code at the bottom to kick things off. So if name is equal to main, then I want to make a root. And then I want to call my init method pass in root. And then let's call the run method. Okay, and we can also put a title here. And then let's see if this actually works. So I'm going to right click and run it. Okay, so not quite. Let's see where we are. Oh, should be self. And so we also have to set this up. So this top level, we're going to go ahead at the bottom of this method. We're going to say self.main window equals top level. There we go. So here's our window. We don't have anything in it yet. I kind of feel like we should have gotten a title there, and we should have gotten this label. So let's go ahead and see what we have so far again. So I'm going to go ahead and put a breakpoint on the code and make sure I'm actually getting here. So I am. And let's go ahead and step. So I have a header label. Oh, I think I have to put this in a grid as well. So let's go ahead and try that. Oops. So let's do top level dot grid. Column is 0, row is 0. Okay, that worked. All right, so I just forgot to set the style on that. All right, so now I have a label. Let's go ahead in the input frame. What I want to have is 2 columns with 2 labels and 2 entries. So Yeah, so actually I have a couple of copies of this open, so let's get rid of one of them. So here's what I want. Here's what I have right now. So 2 labels and 2 entries inside of my input frame. So I don't need either of these labels in my code. I don't need to change them or anything. So I can just call ttk.label without storing that anywhere. And that's going to be, actually I do because I'm going to make a grid. So this is volts label. And that's ttk label and input frame. And the text is going to be volts, colon. And then ohms label, input frame, ohms. And then I want a volts entry. That's the box I'm typing into. And an ohms entry. Okay, and then I'm going to put all this stuff in a grid. So volts label dot grid, and that's going to be column 0, row 0, and ohms label is column 0, yeah, row 1. And then volts entry is column 1, row 0. And ohms entry is column 1, row 1. Okay, and then I want the right sides of these to line up, so they both have to be sticky east. So this label here, I want to be sticky east, and same thing with this one. Oops. Okay. And let's see where we are so far. So I'm going to go ahead and run this again. Okay, so I have my boxes. Now, I want this whole frame to be shifted over, so I don't want to use north, south, east, west here. I just want to use centered. So let me just use the default here instead. And then I want some additional padding around this to make that separate. So I put 3 pixels around everything on both of these. So let's just go ahead and add padding to the entries. So I just want Y separation. Okay, that looks good to me. Okay, and now I have my buttons. So here I'm going to have an OK button and a clear button. So let's go ahead and create a clear button. And this is going to be in the button frame. And the text is clear. And I'll have a command that links up to my code, but I don't need it just yet. And then I'll put that in a grid. Actually, let me go ahead and make an OK button. So that could be okay, or calculate, and then I'll put these in a grid as well. So clear button grid. So this is going to be column 0, row 0, and this one is going to be column 1, row 0. So they're side by side. Okay. And then I'm probably going to want some padding here as well, but let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, so there's my buttons. I got too much space around here. It looks a little off kilter, so let's get rid of this padding. Okay, that looks pretty good. And I could increase the space here by putting X padding in here. So let's go ahead and put X padding around the clear button. So pad X equals 3. And that'll put just a little bit more space.